This video will discuss the current UK spouse visa fees and costs in 2025. As an immigration advice authority regulated UK immigration law firm that has helped more than 4,600 partners obtain their UK partner visas, we're very well placed to discuss this. We will discuss the standard spouse visa fee, the optional priority service and the costs associated with that, the immigration health surcharge, other costs which partners sometimes initially overlook, and answers to frequently asked questions about all of the above. At this stage, it's good to note that the fees for out-of-country applications and in-country applications are different. Whilst this video will cover both out-of-country and in-country application fees, you should know whether you'll be making an out-of-country or an in-country application. We won't spend too much time on this as we have a separate video which discusses this in detail. But in short, if the applicant, who's the person that will need a visa to stay in the UK, does not have any UK visas, they'll be making an out-of-country application. It is only those already in the UK on certain visas who can make the application from inside the UK. So, common visas that allow making an in-country application include UK spouse and partner visas, UK fiancé or proposed civil partnership visas, Tier 1 visas, Tier 2 visas or skilled worker visas, Tier 4 or long-term student or graduate visas, Tier 5 visas, including Youth Mobility Scheme visas. The current standard UK spouse visa fee in 2025 is £1,321 for applications made from inside the UK and approximately £1,938 for applications made from outside the UK. These two figures here are the cost per person applying. So, if you have dependent children applying for a visa at the same time as their parent, you'll need to pay the same fee for the Home Office to process their visa, as shown in this table. The fee only needs to be paid for dependent children applying. Therefore, if you have British or Irish children, or children who already have settled status in the UK, or children who will be staying in their overseas home country, you will not have to pay the fees in relation to them, including the immigration health surcharge, which we will also discuss in this video. If you want the application to be processed quicker than the standard processing time, there's normally an option to pay for a priority service. We discussed the various processing times and numerous frequently asked questions about the processing times on our website, migrate.org.uk, but in summary, the standard processing time is up to 12 weeks for out-of-country applications and up to 8 weeks for in-country applications. The super priority service is normally available for in-country applications for an additional £1,000 per applicant and will reduce the expected processing time to 1 working day on average. If there are dependent children applying at the same time and you want to opt for the super priority service, the super priority service fee must be paid for each additional applying dependent child. The priority service is normally available for out-of-country applications for an approximate additional cost of £500 per applicant and will reduce the expected processing time to 30 working days on average. Again, I use the word approximate. We'll discuss that later. The priority service is not available for in-country applications and the super priority service is not available for out-of-country applications. Again, we have separate guidance about the current UK spouse visa processing times and the optional priority service on our website, so we won't elaborate on that too much here and we will just focus on costs. So when will you have to pay the Home Office fee and the priority or super priority service if you choose to opt for that? As we discussed in our UK spouse visa process and timeline video, first you will have to answer the many questions in the online application form. Second, you will have to pay the immigration health surcharge, which we will also discuss shortly. Once the immigration health surcharge has been paid, you will then automatically be redirected to the Home Office application fee payment page. If you're making an out-of-country application, it's currently the case that only the standard Home Office fee will be listed here. If you want to pay for the priority service for an out-of-country application, you will first have to pay the standard Home Office fee. You will then be redirected to the VFS website where the priority service fee can be paid, if available. The priority service fee can normally be purchased up to the time of the appointment, and it can normally be paid for at the visa centre appointment. For in-country applications, you will first have to complete the online application form, pay the immigration health surcharge, and then you'll be sent to the Home Office application fee payment page. The standard Home Office fee will always be listed here. The super priority fee will also be listed on the same page when available. Please note that the super priority service can only be purchased when you reach this page on the online application form. It cannot be purchased on the TLS website, which you'll be redirected to after submitting the application by paying the Home Office fees on the online application form. So, if the expiry date of the visa permits, if you want to opt for the super priority service but it is not showing when you first reach this page, we would suggest keep on checking this page throughout the day, particularly in the early morning, to purchase the super priority service. A hidden cost to be aware of is that the Home Office fee and the Immigration Health Surcharge for out-of-country applications are rarely charged in British pounds. Rather, the fees will likely be listed in USD, Euros, or another currency depending on the country in which the applicant is applying. More significantly, the exchange rate used by the Home Office can lead to partners sometimes paying up to 5% more or less than the rate seen on Google or other popular exchange rate platforms when paying in an overseas currency. Furthermore, for out-of-country applications, depending on the account type for the card used for payment, you may also have to incur an additional foreign currency conversion fee. In contrast, in-country applications are always charged in British pounds. The date the spouse visa fee is paid is significant. For both out-of-country and in-country applications, the requirements must be met on the date that the visa fee is paid. In the immigration rules and the online application, this is referred to as the date of application. For example, the sponsor relied on his employment income to meet the financial requirement. 2 days after submitting the online application by paying the Home Office fees, the sponsor quit his job. This is technically irrelevant to the application and should be fine because, as previously mentioned, the key date for meeting the requirements is when the Home Office fees are paid. Let's briefly discuss Home Office fee refunds and when they may be issued. Firstly, the Home Office fee will unfortunately not be refunded for refused applications. Secondly, if the application is withdrawn before the applicant attends the visa centre, a refund of the Home Office fee will be issued. In such a case, if you paid for the priority or super priority service, you should email this email address here to request a refund, as these refunds are not automatically issued. And thirdly, if the application is withdrawn after the applicant attends the visa centre, a refund will not normally be issued. What if you paid the priority fee for an out-of-country application and the application was not decided within 30 working days? Or if you paid the super priority fee for an in-country application and the application was not decided by the end of the next working day? Whether a refund of the priority or super priority fee can be issued or not depends on the reason for taking as long as it did. You will not normally get a refund if you did not get a decision in time because the Home Office needed more information or evidence to make a decision. You may get a refund if they could not give you a decision in time because of something outside of their control, for example, a technical problem. Let's now discuss the Immigration Health Surcharge. Unfortunately, the fact that either the applicant or sponsor has already paid thousands in UK taxes does not exempt them from paying this fee. It must still be paid. For out-of-country applications, the IHS will cost £3,105, whilst for in-country applications it will cost £2,587.50. Just like the Home Office fee, the IHS must also be paid for each dependent child included in the application. Additionally, it's also important to note that the entire IHS fee must be paid up front. You cannot pay in monthly or yearly instalments. The payment for the Immigration Health Surcharge is made during the online application process. For both out-of-country and in-country applications, the IHS is paid before the Home Office fee using a credit or debit card. There are 2 additional points worth noting here. Firstly, out-of-country fiancé visa applicants do not have to pay the IHS for the fiancé visa application. However, they must pay the Immigration Health Surcharge for the subsequent FLRM application, which they'll need to submit before their 6-month fiancé visa expires. And secondly, the IHS will be refunded if a partner visa application is refused or withdrawn, even if the applicant attended the biometric appointment. Now let's move on to discuss the other more minor costs associated with the application that partners may not initially be aware of. 1. Secure English language test costs. The cost for the secure English language tests vary depending on the country the test is taken, but typically range between £120 and £200. There are quite a few questionable third-party websites that claim to provide secure English language tests but are not Home Office approved providers. They often charge a markup, essentially making you pay an extra £50 or so just to book the appointment for you. To avoid this, I'd strongly recommend booking your test only through the official test providers' websites. There are a few quick points I want to highlight, which are discussed in more detail in our spouse visa requirements YouTube video. 1. Not any English language test will suffice. The test must be a Home Office approved secure English language test, and we list these approved tests on our website, migrate.org.uk. 2. There are other ways to satisfy the English language requirement that will not incur any additional costs for certain applicants. most notably if the applicant is from a majority English-speaking country, is age 65 or over when submitting the application, or already holds an academic undergraduate degree or higher from a UK university. We cover the various ways to satisfy the English language requirement on our website and in our spouse visa requirements YouTube video. 3. Dependent children included in the application will not need to take an English language test, as the English language requirement does not apply to them. Lastly, to save money, if the applicant's English language ability is strong enough, they can opt to take the A2 or B1 test. This is because even though secure English language tests are only valid for 2 years, the test can be reused when extending a partner visa, providing it was successfully relied on in the previous partner visa grant. 2. Other additional services. There are several optional added value services available. For in-country applications, in addition to the regular no additional cost self-service appointment, which involves uploading your supporting documents online before attending the visa centre, there are currently 2 additional optional services. First, the assisted service will cost you an additional £50 per applicant. This service essentially involves bringing paper copies of supporting documents to the visa centre to be scanned and submitted to the Home Office. This is not something that we generally recommend. Rather, we normally recommend that partners self-upload the supporting documents before the visa centre appointment. Second, partners may decide to opt for the prime time appointment for an additional £60 per applicant, which provides greater availability of visa centre appointments. For out-of-country applications, the cost and availability of other additional services vary depending on the location of the particular visa centre. You can check what services these are by visiting vfsglobal.com, then selecting the country you're applying from, and then select the UK as the destination. You will then be able to see the optional additional cost services by clicking View Services under the Premium Services subsection here. We do not generally recommend the document scanning or document upload assistance service, which tends to cost between £15 and £95. Partners tend to prefer the free alternative, which is to self-upload the documents before the visa centre appointment. For out-of-country applications, one service which we want to highlight is the Keep My Passport service, which usually costs between £50 and £90 depending on the visa centre. This service can be very useful if you want to travel whilst the visa is being processed, or even come to the UK if you have the correct documentation to do so. For in-country applications, applicants will always retain possession of their passport as part of the standard process, but please note that if the applicant leaves the UK whilst the application is processing, this will withdraw the application. 3. Document translations. The immigration rules require that specific documentation not in English or Welsh must be translated. The cost for the translation will vary depending on what documents need to be translated, most commonly marriage certificates, divorce certificates and bank statements. The more affordable translators in the UK typically charge around £40 to translate a one-page document and £80 to translate a two-page document. There are a few key points to quickly highlight regarding document translations. First, the translation can be done either in the UK or overseas. If you prefer to get the translation done by an overseas translator, you can find a list of overseas translators by googling translators and interpreters abroad gov.uk. You will see a page like this. Translations done overseas tend to be significantly cheaper than those done in the UK. Secondly, the immigration rules outline specific requirements for document translations. The translation must be dated and include confirmation that it is an accurate translation of the document, the full name and signature of the translator or an authorized official of the translation company, and the translator or translation company's contact details. And for in-country applications, the translation must include certification by a qualified translator and details of the translator or translation company's credentials. Third, if the document is in English and other languages, such as marriage certificates from Denmark, which often include multiple languages, the document does not need to be translated. TB test costs. As we explain in our detailed spouse visa requirements YouTube video, certain out-of-country applicants will need to pay for a TB test. TB test costs can vary significantly, but on average they tend to range between £65 and £110. If you'd like more information about the UK spouse and partner visa requirements, or if you'd like help with your application, you can visit our website www.migrate.org.uk.